And welcome back to the Cover 3 podcast here on CBS Sports. That's Tom Fernelli. I'm Chip Patterson, and I just talked myself into quite a Sunday, huh? Yeah, I out here thinking that just because LSU was able to get a win against Florida and not lose at home to the Gators, that meant that Ed Orgeron would continue to be LSU's head coach, and we would not have any news on a Sunday when your boy was on the shift. But we already got our CBS Sports HQ hit in, breaking news, got on there with Big Game Dennis Dodd. We got a little breaking news story filed to editorial. Ross Dellinger, Bruce Feldman, among those who got things rolling with the reporting that LSU and Ed Orgeron have reached a separation agreement. And that agreement says that Coach O will not be back to coach the Tigers in 2022. There's more levels to this, including the timing, the financials, and where LSU goes from here. But Tom, where are you at with this? Like, are you glad that we're just moving on now and we can start just putting the specter of a coach firing in the background? I mean, we're coming to you live with an emergency podcast live on youtube.com/cover3.
I mean, I think if you're LSU, this was just, you knew you were going to do it. Like, the whole world's known this was going to happen. We've been, like you said, we've been joking about it the last 2 weeks. Last week, I was scared because I had to work on Sunday, and I was like, oh no, if LSU loses, I'm going to have to spend my day doing this. And we were joking about it. But I think that, like, this is a situation where LSU kind of wants to avoid what happened with Les Miles,
where he won himself another season.
Yeah, they don't want this team getting hot down the stretch. And then Orgeron, like, you can't, okay, now they go 9-3 or, whatever. You can't fire him after winning 6 straight games or whatever to finish the season, that kind of situation. So they just got it done now. And it is so strange because, like, I know that there are all sorts of reasons that you don't see as far as just the results are concerned for why this happened. But just think, like, logically about how Ed Orgeron won a national title 2 seasons ago.
21 months ago.
And he won a game. He won a game 15 hours ago against a ranked team in an upset.
At home. He got
fired.
Yeah. And I kind of like
that's the SEC.
So what do you think happens for this team? Like, before we get to the job, what do you do with LSU? Like, when it comes time for trying to pick the games and trying to handicap, like, what happens next? Like,
I'm avoiding them.
Just no chance.
I mean, think about
what we saw from them against the Gators, where there's obviously some pride, right?
No, yeah, for sure. But I mean, think about what we've seen with this team in the last few weeks. Like, we've seen guys getting injuries and just shutting it down. And there are, you hear the stories about how part of the reason LSU is making this move is because everybody in that locker room is kind of sick of each other.
Oh, yeah.
And now that the coach has been fired and for sure he's not coming back, some guys might say, well, some guys might just have that personal kind of pride where they're going to keep playing hard just because that's what they do. But there are also going to be some guys in that team who are just like, all right, cool, whatever.
Yeah. I kind of think that LSU is still going to. So the problem is there's just not many games left on LSU's schedule where they're going to be winning, right? So all you'd be doing if you think that they're going to be able to have some fight is you just think that they're going to catch somebody sleeping and cover the spread.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the thing too, because, like, if you look at what they're 4-2 now.
4-3.
4-3. So they only need 2 more wins. But if you look at the rest of their schedule, like, there's no guarantee this is a team that's even going to end up going to a bowl game. And now that they've fired Orgeron now, or at least there's been the mutual separation agreement, they've just got to figure out what weekend Ed's going to get Joe Burrow. But it's like, this is a team that could go 1-5 down the stretch, honestly, because they've got Ole Miss next week. They got Alabama, Arkansas. Then there's the ULM game. But hey, ULM just beat Liberty. Maybe it could beat LSU too.
Come on.
And then it's got Texas A&M. But seriously, like, you could see LSU losing all 4 of those non-SEC games.
Yes.
Or SEC games. So I don't know. This is a weird situation. I don't think it's really going to slow anything down. In fact, it'll probably be somewhat of a bigger distraction, because now imagine fast forwarding going into that Thanksgiving weekend. Ed's going into coach's final game, his final regular season game, maybe his final game, depending on bowl eligibility. And he's going up against Texas A&M, who is coached by Jimbo Fisher, who was hired at A&M
by Scott Woodward.
And maybe at this point, Texas A&M's ranked right now, and it's got that win over Alabama. But maybe by the time the season ends, like it's been a disappointing year in College Station. So, like, you can already hear all the is this Jimbo's last game before going to LSU? But you're also going to hear like the James Franklin speculation, like because this is a huge job, and now we've got 2 months of this job being open, and let's not forget like what we saw with the Auburn gig last year. This is still an SEC school. This is still a school that literally just fired its coach less than 2 years after a national title and less than a day after he won a game. This is going to get really stupid, and it's going to be really dumb for the next 2 months, and it's going to be fun as hell. It's going to be great content for us.
Oh, no, listen, this is fantastic for us. I jokingly said in a meeting that with USC opening up in September and November always being crazy, all we needed was for LSU to make a move on Coach O in October. And then we've just like really given ourselves the maximum amount of breathing room, because sometimes the huge jobs open up in December, but it's one of 5 jobs in a row. So we don't actually spend that much time talking about it. But you mentioned a couple of names there with James Franklin and Jimbo Fisher. So let's go ahead and spin this on into the Scott Woodward, fantasy land as he's sitting there. The old saying is every good athletic director has a list in the top drawer of his desk with 10 names on it that would be coaches that you would call if all of a sudden you needed to go make a hire. Who do you think is on that list for Scott Woodward? And can we start with Jimbo, or do you think that Jimbo is completely content and will not, after flirtations from time when he was at Florida State, always having his name connected to LSU. He enjoyed his time when he was an assistant there under Nick Saban, and he's, spoken fondly of the job. Do you think that Jimbo Fisher would make a move from Texas A&M to LSU? Do you think Lane Kiffin would make a move from Ole Miss to LSU? And then we can get on to sort of the James Franklin and more outside of the SEC family type names.
I think Jimbo's on the list. I don't know if he'd make the move. I think that if you make him a ridiculous offer, I mean, yeah, he'd make the move. Like, I think that you've seen you can win national titles at LSU. Like, Les Miles won a national title there. Ed Orgeron won a national title there. And Saban won a national title there, obviously, first. But there's really not a lot of history to suggest that Texas A&M can win national titles, but it certainly seems easier in Louisiana with Louisiana State, where you are the flagship school, the only real destination in a state filled with talent, where even at Texas A&M, you've got plenty of talent in that state, but you've got other schools to compete with to get it, including other SEC schools now who are going more and more into Texas now that A&M's in the conference, and the Longhorns will soon be joining them. So I think the path to a national title is easier at LSU. And I think if that's what Jimbo wants, and he sees what he's dealing with in A&M, and he says, I can go with a natty there. I don't know if I could do it here, and I don't know how much more time I get here to not win it before I'm the guy that's getting Orgeron. He might make the move. Again, I don't think it's likely, but if LSU comes and says, here's $10 million a year, of course he's going to consider it. I think that Franklin is a guy that makes a lot of sense. I think he's a good fit. I don't know if LSU, if that kind of situation and that atmosphere is going to be incredibly appealing to him. It might be. I think as far as recruiting acumen and all that stuff, and obviously he has some familiarity with the SEC after spending all those years at Vandy. So I think that could be somebody you hear. I think Mario Cristobal is a name you're probably going to hear. And I think depending on what Oregon's willing to pay up to keep him there, I think the LSU job would be attractive to him. I think Lane Kiffin would go there, yes.
Oh, man.
I mean, Lane Kiffin, we've already seen him. Like, he just left Tennessee after a year to go to USC, and Ole Miss could just be Tennessee to LSU, because USC is a place where you can go win national titles. It's a blue blood program. LSU is a place where you can win national titles. It's one of the top jobs in the country. He might see that as a step up. And plus, let's be honest, like, you don't think Lane would enjoy it? Lane enjoyed getting golf balls thrown at him on Saturday night. Like, he was, even after all that stuff happened, as he was leaving the field, he was still egging the fans on that were still there in attendance. Like, he would love to start this rivalry between, not start it, but, really add another thing to the rivalry between Ole Miss and LSU by taking that job. He would relish it.
It is not lost on me how Lane is having a flourish season here in 2021 in so many ways. He's the center of a college football universe right now, his own college football universe. Everyone did all the Tennessee retrospectives. You know, we're spending a lot of time going down memory lane to the tarmac and to leaving for USC. That would be splashy. All right, well, let's take it to something a little bit less splashy, I think, would be to try to get either your offensive or your passing game coordinator or your defensive coordinator from that magical 2019 season where you go get Joe Brady, who's now offensive coordinator at the Carolina Panthers.
I don't think Joe Brady's leaving the NFL.
Would Matt Rule leave?
No, I don't think. I think most coaches, once they get to the NFL, would rather just stay in the NFL, especially now with the recruiting and the transfer portal stuff. Like Joe Brady's going to be an NFL head coach.
I don't think Joe Brady's the splashy college football name that I would associate with.
No, Joe Brady is an offensive guru, which is exactly what NFL teams want. And if the Panthers offense does well, it's only going to be a year or two until Joe Brady is an NFL head coach. He's not going to leave that for LSU, even if it is one of the best jobs in college. I just don't think that he's interested. I think Dave Aranda could make some sense, but I don't know if that's really who LSU wants.
So who else is on that list of who LSU wants?
I mean, Billy Napier, if this was a year ago, is one of the top names on the list. I don't know where that would stand now.
I think Mel Tucker is a hotter name than Billy Napier as we sit here on October 17th.
Here's the thing. Like, if I'm Mel Tucker, first of all, there's precedent that shows leaving Michigan State for LSU leads to very good things for you. But secondly, if I'm Mel Tucker, I mean, I guess, you know what? No, never mind. It doesn't matter these days because, again, LSU just fired a coach 2 years after winning a national title and a day after winning.
He also skipped out on Colorado after a year.
That's what I'm saying. I don't think Mel Tucker should even worry about that kind of perception because nobody remembers that anyway. And I don't think it matters anymore because loyalty, like, it used to kind of exist in this industry of coaching. Now it doesn't exist on either side. So I don't understand why Mel Tucker should ever feel compelled, but that would just be strange for him to go from Colorado after a year, take over Michigan State at an odd time, and then leave Michigan State pretty quickly too for LSU. But again, if he does it, it's probably the right. I mean, it's the right move because
he's got that long history from Alabama and Georgia. Like that man's Rolodex for recruiting in the SEC is absolutely.
He would kill it at LSU. He would kill it.
So
I mean. Look at what he's doing with Michigan State already. If then the kind of talent that they have down there, Mel Tucker would win a lot of football games at LSU.
To me, if I'm cosplaying as Scott Woodward, which of course, what grown man doesn't cosplay as an LSU athletic director from time to time, I would bet that Billy Napier says yes. Like, hello? Oh, it's Scott. Yes. Yeah, Scott, I'm in. Yeah, no, it's okay. I've got a car ready. I've had a car ready ever since October 17th. I'll be there. Like I would feel confident if I was LSU athletic director Scott Woodward that Billy Napier would say yes if offered the job. He is interested, and I would feel pretty confident that that is like a decent place to land. Mm-hmm. That if LSU is introducing Billy Napier, they might say he was our first choice all along. You know, this scenario might mean that if Billy Napier is introduced as LSU's head coach, then the job might not have been offered to anybody else, but at least there were some other names that we've discussed already that might not have decided to bite. But I still think that's a great place to be. Like if I'm handicapping the future of the Tigers program, the way that Coach O has recruited over the last couple of years, I mean, we're talking about number 4 recruiting class in the 2020 cycle, the number 3 recruiting class in the 2021 cycle. They're currently sitting on a top 10 class for 2022. TBD, of course, as a lot of those players are probably going to get many calls from other coaches looking to poach and pick apart that class between now and the early signing day. But the sell of the team that you're coming to take over is very intriguing. Do you see any reason why Billy Napier would not even want to come? Because we saw his name.
Billy Napier's taking LSU if LSU comes calling. If he doesn't, I would question his mental stability if he doesn't. I mean, it's just I'm trying to think of like like I feel like of big names or obvious candidates who would say no. I think Joe Brady. I said the other one. I think Luke Fickell is somebody
Say
that could
no.
do a good job there. I just don't know how attractive LSU and being in the SEC is to Fickell and leaving the Midwest. What's interesting to me, here's a question for you. Based on what we've seen, would you rather have the USC job or the LSU job?
The LSU job.
Okay. So you're willing to risk getting fired just because you haven't won a title in a couple months?
Yes.
Whereas at USC, they'll pay you forever just to go 8-4 before they finally cave.
I understand that you can look. I could sit out here and tell you that, Los Angeles weather, the ability to win the Pac-12 South with 2 conference losses and just skate for 7 years without making a college football playoff. But while that may seem like great quality of life, I'm a little bit cemented in my stance because of our friend Barton Simmons, RIP Barton, who talked about those state championship days down in the Superdome in New Orleans. And guess what? 1A, 2A, 3A, 4A, 5A, 6A, everybody's Tigers and everybody's got purple and gold. Like the entire state, which is loaded with talent and great high school football players, are all LSU crazy. Like that is my LSU Texas A&M. I break LSU. That is my LSU USC. It's just there are so many people in the community who care so deeply in ways that I don't think are as widespread at Texas A&M, and I don't think the care is there around the USC community.
Well, speaking of Barton, maybe we should campaign to get one of our hosts the LSU job, see if we can keep this streak alive and the Cover 3 coaching tree going. Kale Westbrook just mentioned in the comments, he said maybe they can lure Brian Kelly down. I don't think there's any way in the world that would happen, but I would think it would be hilarious to see Brian Kelly in Baton Rouge. Just that would be funny to watch. Not that I think he'd be good. I think they'd be good. It's just the personality wise and where Brian Kelly's from, and just like the angry Irish Northeastern guy in Baton Rouge seems like a comedy movie.
Where like he's just looking around all the time at people wearing funny clothes. He's like, "What's that about?
Mm-hmm.
What's that?" Yeah, he doesn't quite get it the entire time. No, Brian Kelly is going to stay at Notre Dame until he's decided he's done coaching, because you pull up that man, you start to go all the way back to the Grand Valley State days, and you're like, oh, he's done this a long time. I definitely understand why he would want to move on. All right, what about the way that this has ended with LSU? The separation agreement, according to Bruce Feldman, the plan is to pay the $17 million buyout so that they can be able to move forward and get this process going. It is 21 months after a national championship. Are we always going to remember Coach O as like getting chiswicked and being thrown in the same boat here? Or do you look at it with a little bit different context?
No, I view it the same. It's just, here's the thing. Like there are off the field issues that you're going to hear about now, especially now that this has been made official. Things will be leaked that they want to help, so that way you control the narrative a bit more.
Oh, cold-blooded.
Yeah, but let's not kid ourselves. Any off-field issues that might be going on, or locker room issues, wouldn't be a problem if LSU's undefeated right now. Wouldn't be a problem if LSU's competing for a division title, and SEC title, and a playoff berth. That's the real problem, is that they've lost too many games since winning that national title.
I'm not going to link it up to Chiswick. While the move might feel like getting chiswicked, I do think that this LSU team didn't hit the floor. Like the floor was still 5-5.
Yeah, like they didn't bottom out. They just the SEC is different in a lot of ways. And I know that like people make fun of the "it just means more" kind of thing, but compared to a lot, like it's national title or bust. And everybody feels like they can win a national title, even though there's clearly a pecking order in the SEC, as good as the conference has been over the years, of a couple of teams who are clearly on top while everybody else is just, fighting with them. But this is just how things go. It's crazy. It makes no sense unless you're entrenched in it every single day. Like I had a friend text me when the news broke. He's like, "Wait, LSU fired its coach?" I was like, "Hey," he goes, "Didn't they literally just win a title?" And I was like, "Yeah." He goes, "What the hell?" And I says, "Dude, it's just that's the SEC, man. That's just how it works."
Any other names that you would want to mention just in terms of ones to keep an eye on or ones that you're particularly intrigued by? Heck, make a suggestion for Scott Woodward.
I see. That's the thing. I don't have a suggestion that isn't a name that makes sense because I don't think that LSU could just, if you're making this move, you can't just replace him with like a, up and comer. You're trying to get a name. So I think that the names we've all mentioned are what it's going to be. And I think most of them, honestly, it's not just one of those cases where you're connecting big name to big job and then just trying to hammer it in, see if it fits. I think there's a lot of big names who make sense for this job, who would be good fits for this job. So I don't think it's going to get past that. And I also think that it's an attractive gig. So they're going to get one of those names. It's just a question of which one will it be.
Brent Venables?
No, I don't. Especially this year. I mean, Clemson's having such a down season, but if Brent Venables isn't a head coach by now, I just don't think Brent Venables wants to be a head coach.
Would Matt Campbell take this job?
No, this is not a Matt Campbell job. Matt Campbell will want to build the program in his, vision of what a football program should be. And it won't just be about getting a bunch of 5 stars and producing NFL talent. He could recruit to LSU because I think you and I could recruit to LSU, but the other stuff that goes on behind the scenes is just not Matt Campbell's bag. And I use the word bag somewhat
intentionally.
Yeah.
Not to say that this is the bag, a bag man, but PJ Fleck was a name that I thought was interesting for the USC discussion. And I think he probably occupies that similar tier of a Power 5 coach who's had one really good season and some good trending with the Minnesota program since he took over, and obviously great success at Western Michigan. Does PJ Fleck seem like someone who could come into Baton Rouge and bring enough, sizzle?
No, I think Fleck makes more sense for the USC job than the LSU job. I just don't think. I don't know how long his personality would fly.
This is going to be so wild because we're going to have a lot of message board ideas. We're going to have a lot of local report ideas. And maybe this does just end up coming all the way back to Billy Napier, introduced as the new LSU coach, something that was thrown as like an offhanded comment, from July from like May all the way through the preseason. We'll see. But splashy hire are the 2 words that are being put together associated with Scott Woodward. This is a top 10 job. I'm fascinated to see how it ends up playing out.
How about this one from WJW Willow in the comments? Hugh Freeze. I mean, I feel like it's a really hard sell after he just lost to ULM, but SEC West experience. He knows the conference. He can recruit. He's got an exciting offense.
So there is the issue of scandal around LSU. And I know that Hugh Freeze's scandal is not related.
True. Yeah.
But still going to be something that you're going to have to wrestle with, at least in terms of being the leadership, the university leadership. You're going to have to answer it. I'd say in terms of current and former Ole Miss head coaches, I'd rather have Lane Kiffin than Hugh Freeze.
So would I.
Okay.
I think Lane Kiffin is more likely.
Tom Herman?
That would be funny. Like,
Tom Herman's ready to go.
Tom Herman is who it was supposed to be instead of Orgeron. So
yeah.
it would be pretty funny if they lost out on Herman, hire Orgeron, win a national title, and then fire Orgeron to hire Tom Herman.
It would be hilarious if LSU is out here introducing Tom Herman as its next head coach and enthusiastic about it. I don't think it's going to be Bob Stoops. Mike Gundy is a fascinating position because that guy has been associated with so many jobs during his very consistent run at Oklahoma State, especially over the last decade or so. He hasn't left yet. It would surprise me if he took off and took this LSU job, but he very well could. I don't know. That's definitely splashy.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how excited LSU fans would be for Mike Gundy, though, because it's not like Oklahoma State's a recruiting, wagon.
Oh, that's true. No, someone said in the comments earlier, grapefruit could recruit to LSU.
Yeah, no, that's the thing. Like, obviously, we need to see long term. It's only the first year, but that was the worry with Brian Harsin coming to Auburn as well, and that he wasn't really a great recruiter at Boise State, but he surrounded himself with a staff full of recruiters. So you can bring in somebody like that who would then bring in the staff to take care of that. But I don't know. I think that there needs to be, I think in the SEC, more often than not, you want like a recruiting talisman. You want like that charismatic figure that can really close the deal and then get that talent there, because there's a lot of competition for it in that conference, because there's a lot of good options for the players in the area.
Yeah, I'm going to say no to Chip Kelly.
No, Chip Kelly. That's why I never thought Chip Kelly would take the Florida gig.
Well,
I remember I wrote a column that said Chip Kelly was more likely to take the UCLA job than Florida, and then I got yelled at by a lot of Florida fans for a couple days until, guess what? Chip Kelly took the UCLA job.
We will be talking about this job opening for the weeks and months to come until it is finally announced. Well, actually, one last either or for you. No, it's not Urban Meyer. No way. If it's Urban Meyer.
Urban just won a game. Urban's on a hot streak right now.
Okay. Will USC or LSU be introducing their new head coach first?
Oh, LSU.
I think so too.
Because I think LSU is they're both swimming in the same candidate pool. And I think LSU is going to have more money to offer, and it's going to be a more attractive job to most of the coaches.
The locker room is loaded with talent, and it is poised for instant success. It is the best job available. The LSU job is open for 2022, and it is the best open job on the market. We will see who ends up getting targeted by Scott Woodward as we continue to follow this. You can follow him on Twitter at Tom Fernelli. You can follow me at Chip_Patterson. We will be back on Monday, 3 p.m. for Upon Further Review, so that we can continue to share some of our notes from the weekend. And of course, we'll have Danny Cannell and Bud Elliott weighing in, and we'll have more and more information to be able to add to this developing story. Thanks to those of you who joined us on YouTube at youtube.com/cover3. Reminder, if you subscribe to the Cover 3 podcast on YouTube, smash that bell, that notification, because when we go live in a situation like this, if Coach O gets fired or if LSU announces Tom Herman as its next head coach next week, well, then we will be going live to talk about it, and you will get an alert, so you don't even have to worry about trying to track us down. Tom, thank you very much.
Go Bears.